So we are here with Alistair Petrie at the Watersprite Film Festival in Cambridge. So Alistair, is it your first time in Cambridge?
It's not actually. I have
Okay.
a nephew who is studying here, so I've been up here 3 or 4 times in the last 6 months. One to hang out with a brilliant bunch of students, and also to see some theatre, which he's very much.
Well, I mean, Cambridge is absolutely a great place to that, and so at this film festival, do you find that you're being exposed to a lot of sort of independent filmmaking? You know, what do you kind of make of what you've seen so far here?
I think it's well. Firstly, there's a fantastic youth element, which is for very selfish reasons, because all these people will be employing me at some point in the future, which is the cynical version. But no, it's I think now more than at any time, certainly of recent history, new and dynamic voices need to be heard big time, given where we are politically in the world, because stories tell us so much about ourselves, and very much the fact that I think the sense of young people's voices being heard. I mean, if you just take the most recent incident in the US, young people's voices seem to be the thing that's driving and making people listen. And I know that's a sort of a more political point, but to the same extent, filmmakers who are telling stories about the world in which they live, and in fact the world in which we all live, it's those voices that to be heard now more than ever. I think that's really strong.
I mean, I had a look at your Twitter, and obviously I know you're very kind of passionate, particularly about, as you rightly said, young people, and obviously looking at the absolutely horrific shooting in Parkland, Florida, and obviously a lot of people, what they say is, I suppose, comes more from the right, is that, actors, what do they know, why they're getting involved? But I think, I think a lot of people think that it's actually only right that everyone kind of speaks out about this. And how do you kind of...
Yeah, actors, sort of musicians are constantly sort of being told from various factions, and sports people, anyone that has anything resembling a profile. But anyone that has anything resembling a profile, I think, doesn't have a sort of a pious duty to use whatever voice that they have. But I think it on occasion can be useful. I mean, on sort of the grander scale, but also if you're the hotel room you stay in is a bit ropey, you can get a response, which is always quite nice. Me less so than many other people, but I think. As I said before, the madness of the world at the moment, I think that the voice of youth has never ever been more important.
So I mean, I'd like to talk quickly about, or not even quickly, about your work. So I first saw you, as perhaps many people did, in Star Wars Rogue One, where you play General Draven. I am something of a fan, a very, very big fan.
Star Wars man.
And one thing, I mean, I want to know, how was Rogue One described to you when you were first approached about being in it? Because obviously this is a movie which is unlike any Star Wars film we've seen before. Obviously, sort of, don't want to spoil anything if people haven't seen it, but it really defies expectations when it comes to the kind of characters it features, and particularly your character is, and perhaps this is one of the reasons why the film has a kind of reception it did, in that he's very, any means necessary, but he's one of the good guys, or at least he's part of the Rebel Alliance. So how do you kind of see this sort of thing? Like, how was it described to you?
Well, originally the film was described as, it was always described as a standalone, so a one-off, which gave them a certain freedom to sort of explore various things, knowing that they didn't have to start thinking about sequels or anything in those terms, so they could be slightly freer. I mean, the great thing about that whole kind of franchise, and it is a franchise, we can't get away from the kind of commercial aspects of it, is that the people that make them do care passionately about the stories that they want to tell. They fully also understand that it is a kind of a relationship between the storytellers and the audience that they serve, and it is a huge audience and a very passionate audience. So they could take risks, much more so than I think when they were doing the first one, The Force Awakens. I think they knew what they needed to do to sort of relaunch it. They still were bold in addressing certain issues and ideas, but to the same extent, I think the second film that came out, which was obviously ours, they could be much bolder. They could kill people, which gave them a great sense of freedom. They could finish it. They could end the story rather than sort of leave it potentially open. Although there's always a way, but to the same extent. So I think that gave them, and I think they wanted to attempt to be a bit more adult. It was interesting comparing the two, having watched the Last Jedi recently. I was quite struck by the kind of how, I wouldn't call it a kids film, but it's much more of a sort of a family film.
Yes.
Whereas Rogue One's like a good old-fashioned war movie. I mean, the character I was playing originally, he was very much conceived to represent a certain type of attitude, which is, a good guy on the good side, but a military man with a very kind of hawkish sense of what should be done, i.e. it's military action is the only thing and no diplomacy, which again is a very prescient kind of political person and a kind of a figure to sort of examine, really.
So, I mean, in that, like, where did you have any particular inspiration on how you would kind of portray this? I know I was reading a bit about your background. You had some RAF history in your family. So, was any of that helpful in kind of understanding perhaps the mindset of a character like this?
I think the administration of George Bush was quite useful, and that kind of era, which was we're supposed to be good. But diplomacy was fairly quickly nixed in favour of military action. So that sort of era was quite interesting. I mean, it also examines that time-old tradition of there's no purely good and purely bad. It's all the grey in the middle that makes people interesting. But if you're playing a character like that, the first thing you have to try and figure out is where's the sort of humanity in there? What makes him tick as a human being? And so you sort of start with what he's supposed to represent, and then you have to sort of go a bit deeper to try and bring out the kind of a human being as much as possible. But I think you hit the nail on the head. The interesting thing about it is the fact that the rebellion are ostensibly absolutely good, and the Empire are completely bad. I mean, if you distill it down, I mean, you've got the figure of Darth Vader, and you've got the figure of Luke Skywalker in terms of the sort of story character pantheon in Star Wars, essentially completely good, completely bad, and then they start to sort of muddy the waters, which is quite interesting, and I think they try and do that as much as possible within within the whole lot.
Just one more point about Star Wars. Do you ever feel, I don't know, like any trepidation about being part of something which is effectively kind of going to sort of immortalise you? And I mean, in even 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, people will still most likely be coming back to these films, be seeing your character and even long into the future. I mean,
it's an enormous privilege, because we on the first day of shooting, well, actually it was the first day of shooting, Gareth Edwards was the director. We went up to the set, and it was like sort of first day at school. Everyone had little name tags on, and there were dozens and dozens of people. And he said the reason that he brought everyone together is so we could walk around this huge set that they built. I mean, it was epic. It's the biggest set I've ever seen and probably will ever see. And you walk around with your mouth open. And the reason he brought us all together was to say we need to get over the notion of sort of the legacy of what we're trying to do. And the interest was huge as well, of course, of what is this film going to be like, and also who's going to be in it in terms of the characters. Is Darth Vader going to be it? Is who's going to appear in this film? The secrecy was so huge, drones flying overhead and people trying to kind of break into the set. Are there going to be stormtroopers?
Were you allowed to tell your family?
It was tricky. I wasn't supposed to. Mark Hamill described, when asked the question, how would you describe the new Star Wars film? Mark Hamill said, I can describe it in 3 words. And they said, oh, what's that? And he said, a non-disclosure agreement. So I thought it was actually rather astute. And the problem is that I told my sons, and my sons at the time were 12 years old, and that's like putting a notice on the front page of every newspaper on the planet. You're not going to keep that a secret. So I was relieved when the trailer came out, because I thought, well, now I can talk about it. I've got 9 months, because actually, officially speaking, you weren't supposed to say you were in it until it came out. And that's a big secret to keep for 18 months, especially as, ultimately I'm still a 10-year-old man-child, and I'm going to be in a Star Wars film, so it's an incredibly hard secret to keep. But then I had a 9-month grace period, because obviously the trailer was out, so it's fine.
Yeah, and just kind of opening it, obviously talking about your upcoming role in Deep State, espionage, all of that. Do you sort of feel again that there's this very kind of politically tinged, or because obviously we hear a lot of obviously espionage, a lot of that kind of in the news.
Yeah, I mean, I think when Matthew Parkhill, our showrunner and writer and lead director, was kind of creating, conceiving the show, this was comfortably before the current president, and also just the phrase deep state, which has been a kind of a gift, because the heftily right-wing sort of conservative base in America love using deep state as the easy throwdown conspiracy theory or conspiracy theories. So yeah, it's that amazing kind of alchemy that can happen where Matthew will describe it, I'm sure, as such, that you start conceiving and writing something which is, you know, a piece of television drama but with some sort of political elements to it, and then the political elements just keep day in, day out serving you more and more and more, and that's not really design. I think there's a lot of luck in there. And so it's a very, very prescient piece. It really, really is. And in fact, while some of the research that we were doing into the nature of what some of the content of the show, some of the information that was coming back, giving away any spoilers, was truly staggering. Yeah, it's a spy thriller with a very deep, familial heart, I have to say, but there's a fantastic.
I certainly look forward to watching, and very much thank you for your time, and
Pleasure,
I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival.
I'm really looking forward to it. Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.